walked into a room and suddenly it went silent? Not because you said anything, but because your presence said everything. That's not attitude. That's aura. And let me warn you, when your aura is that powerful, it doesn't whisper. It shakes people. It doesn't ask for permission. It disrupts energy. And trust me, most people can't handle that level of energy, especially the insecure ones. If they feel uncomfortable around you, it's not you, darling, it's your power. This is for the women who've been called too much, intimidating, or unapproachable, when in reality, you're just undeniably magnetic. These are the 13 signs. Your aura is so powerful, it doesn't just exist, it interrupts. You trigger the insecure without saying a single word, and that's not arrogance, that's alignment. The world has conditioned you to believe that silence is weakness. But in your case, your silence roars louder than their screams for validation. The insecure, they operate on attention. They thrive when people shrink themselves, laugh a little less, speak a little softer, play a little smaller, just to make others feel more comfortable. But you enter a room and you don't dim your light. And that light blinds those who've only ever survived in shadows. Imagine this. You're at work. A meeting starts, and without even speaking yet, all eyes turn to you. You're not trying to dominate the space. You just carry yourself with quiet confidence. That one co-worker who always tries to one-up others suddenly starts shifting uncomfortably. They crack a passive-aggressive joke. They question your ideas. Why? Because your calmness exposes their chaos. You didn't insult them. You didn't outshine them on purpose. You simply existed in your power. And that was enough to make their insecurities scream. Or think of those times when you're out with friends and you decide not to participate in participation. Meaningless gossip, you just sit there, gracefully quiet, uninterested in drama. Suddenly someone says, "You think you're better than us?" That's not a question, it's a confession. A confession of how your discipline, your silence, your elegance, it disturbs the disorder inside them. You didn't judge them, but your mere presence made them feel judged. There's something deeply spiritual about a woman who refuses to apologize for her energy. You walk into places not needing to prove yourself, not craving applause, and people don't know what to do with that. They're used to performers. But you're a presence, not a performance. And presence is rare. So rare, it terrifies the pretenders. Even in relationships, it happens. When you're emotionally grounded, when you're not needy, when you know your worth without having to announce it, it shakes people. A man who hasn't healed will feel unsafe with a woman who doesn't beg, who doesn't chase, who doesn't break just because he pulls away. He expects drama, but you give him silence. He expects to be worshipped, but you worship peace. And that peace, it unsettles his ego. People who haven't found their own voice will always be unsettled by someone who doesn't need to raise hers to be heard. You could be at a family dinner and someone brings up your choices, your career, your boundaries, your independence. And instead of defending yourself, you just smile. You know who you are, they don't. And that knowing, that inner stillness, it becomes their storm. The truth is, when you heal, when you rise, when you glow up, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, even physically, you're going to trigger those who haven't done the work. You're going to activate every insecurity they've been hiding behind jokes, behind fake confidence. But that's not your burden to carry. You're not responsible for their unhealed wounds. You're responsible for your light. In everyday life, this happens in ways so subtle, yet so loud. A friend you've supported for years suddenly starts distancing themselves the moment you find happiness. You start growing, and their congratulations feel hollow. You lose weight, get promoted, start glowing differently, and suddenly they say, "You've changed." No, you didn't change, you evolved. And they stayed where it was comfortable. You're not doing too much. You're just doing what they won't dare to. You're healing, glowing, breaking generational patterns, walking in truth, and owning your space without apology. That's threatening to people who've been told their entire lives to shrink. But you are the permission they never gave themselves. You are the embodiment of what they thought was impossible. And when you walk like that, grounded, bold, soft, yet unshakable, it rattles something deep inside them. You're the mirror people fear to look into, not because you reflect their beauty, but because you reflect their truth. You don't even try to expose anyone. Yet just being in your presence feels like standing in front of a raw, unfiltered reflection. No makeup, no masks, no illusion. And that's what terrifies them. Not you, themselves. You shine so authentically that it forces others to confront everything they've been avoiding. About their own lives, their own choices, their own identity. You've noticed it, haven't you? You're the one they call too intense or too deep. At brunch, when everyone's laughing about shallow things, you bring up real emotions, real dreams, real growth. And suddenly it's, why are you so serious? But you weren't trying. It makes the fake uncomfortable. It pokes at the parts of themselves they're not proud of, the parts they've buried under filters and false confidence. You're that friend who sits in silence and listens. You don't interrupt. You don't judge. But somehow, after 5 minutes of being around you, people start confessing things they didn't even plan to say. I don't know why I just told you that. They'll say, but you do. It's because your energy is so honest, it disarms lies. Your spirit doesn't accept masks. And that's both healing and haunting to people who've worn masks for too long. Picture this. A colleague at work constantly seeks praise, constantly tries to dominate attention. But when you enter the room, calm, collected, no need to brag, they feel something shift. You don't need to talk about your achievements because your aura already carries them. And without saying a word, you become a mirror to their insecurities, their overcompensation, their ego. It cracks just from standing next to someone who's whole without validation. In relationships, it's even more revealing. You're the partner who doesn't just want surface level love. You ask deep questions. You want to know their fears, their goals, their wounds. And not everyone can handle that level of emotional depth. They'll say, you deserve better. But what they really mean is, I'm not ready to be that honest with myself, let alone with you. They run, not because you're wrong, but because you reflect the version of themselves they've been too afraid to become. Even strangers feel it. You walk into a room and people start fidgeting. You meet someone's eyes and suddenly they look away. Not because you're intimidating, but because your gaze feels like X-ray vision. You see through the noise. You don't care about their labels, their followers, or the show they put on for the world. You see them. And that level of visibility, it's not something most people are ready for. You carry a quiet honesty that speaks louder than words. When people lie in your presence, they feel it. When someone betrays their own truth just to fit in, your energy reminds them of what they gave up. That's what mirrors do. They show you you. They blame the mirror. That's why some will distance themselves from you. That's why they'll say, you're too much, or you make me feel judged. But the truth is they're judging themselves. You just reminded them of the standard they were born to live by, but chose to abandon. Everywhere you go, you wake people up. You don't mean to. But your presence alone says, are you living authentically? Are you aligned? Are you at peace with who you've become? Most won't answer, but they'll feel it in their bones, in their silence after you speak, in their sudden defensiveness after your calm observation. You didn't ask them to change, but your very being shows them what change could look like. And that's the kind of mirror most people avoid until they're brave enough to face themselves. You radiate energy that shifts the room. And no, it's not just charisma. It's not about how loud you speak or how perfectly you dress. It's deeper than charm. It's the kind of energy that walks in before you do. The kind that makes people turn their heads without understanding why. Your energy isn't manufactured. It's not created from ego or external validation. It's born from alignment, from self-respect, from walking through pain and refusing to become bitter. You're not loud, but you're unforgettable. You don't beg to be seen. Your spirit demands attention without uttering a word. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift? The conversation changes, voices soften, eyes widen, because your presence alone carries a vibration that's different. People can sense when you've done the inner work. They can feel when someone walks in who isn't pretending. Most are so used to energy that drains, energy that competes, energy that needs something. But yours gives something. Without effort, without agenda. That kind of energy is rare and it's powerful. You know it at work. You join a meeting and suddenly the energy sharpens. You don't say much at first, but when you do, it lands, it echoes. Not because you forced your opinion, but because you own it. You've done your homework, you trust your voice, and when Someone speaks with that kind of grounded confidence, everyone listens. Even the ones who don't want to. That's what shifting the room looks like. Not noise. Wait. Or picture this, you're at a family gathering. Everyone's caught up in superficial chatter, but the moment you speak about something real, something meaningful, suddenly the room gets quiet. Not awkward, attentive. Because you didn't come to impress, you came to connect. You didn't show up to play roles. You showed up as yourself. And people feel that in their chest. They may not say it, but they remember how you made them feel. Even strangers feel it. You're walking through a store and someone moves out of your way, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You're not demanding space, but space rearranges itself for you. You don't push. Your energy pulls. That's what happens when someone carries peace in a chaotic world. That's what happens when someone walks with integrity in a world of performance. The universe recognizes energy that's real, and people do too, whether they understand it or not. In relationships, your energy is unforgettable. You're not the one begging for attention. You're the one who reminds others of how sacred energy exchange really is. You text with intention. You listen fully. You don't flirt to fill space. You connect to build substance. That energy either draws people closer or sends them running. Because not everyone is ready for the kind of love that doesn't manipulate, doesn't rush, doesn't fake. Some people are addicted to emotional chaos. And when you come in with calm, with clarity, with certainty, they mistake it for something they don't deserve. But your energy has already planted the seed. This is what love should feel like. You shift energy even when you're not trying. You walk into a friend's house and they suddenly feel lighter. You sit beside someone in silence and they feel safe. You pass by someone crying and offer nothing but a gentle nod, and somehow that becomes the moment they feel seen. That's energy that heals. That's energy that anchors. You're not just a person, you're a frequency, and people either rise to meet it or retreat from it. But no one stays the same after encountering it. Because when you've suffered deeply, healed quietly, and grown unapologetically, your presence becomes magnetic. People don't just see you, they feel you. Not on the surface, but in the shift of the air, in the stillness of their thoughts, in the way their soul exhales, the moment you speak. That's not coincidence. That's power. And it's yours. People obsess over you, even if they say they don't like you. And that's not arrogance speaking. That's truth built on energy, presence, and the silent impact you leave behind. You see, when you walk in full alignment with who you are, you become unforgettable. So here you are, misunderstood, magnetic, glowing with an aura that cannot be caged. You're not loud because you need attention. You're loud in silence, in presence, in energy. And the truth is, people can sense when someone walks through fire and still comes out glowing. That's you. You're not here to fit in. You were born to stand out, to disturb the stagnant, awaken the numb, and ignite the forgotten fire in others. You weren't meant to walk quietly through life just so others feel comfortable in their shadows. You were meant to blaze a trail, even if it blinds the ones too scared to open their eyes. Let them whisper, let them wonder, let them label, because lions are never bothered by the opinions of sheep. You're not everyone's cup of tea. And thank God for that. Because when you're rare, you're not supposed to be understood by the common. If people don't understand your energy, it's because they haven't risen to your frequency. They can't meet you where you are, because they've never been brave enough to go there. You didn't come this far to water yourself down. You came to show the world how fire walks in heels, how grace holds power, and how silence can shake everything louder than noise. There's something unforgettable about a person who refuses to beg, refuses to chase, who knows their worth so deeply that rejection isn't a threat, but a redirection. You know, there's no such thing as death, but a redirect. That's power. That's legacy. You become a force that doesn't need to scream to be heard. The room shifts when you enter, not because you're trying, but because you are. You are the type who doesn't wait for the light, you become it. You don't follow the path, you carve it. You don't follow trends, you create them. And even if they don't clap for you now, even if they pretend not to notice, deep down, you inspire them. You're the reason they question their own limits. You're the storm that cleanses, the wind that stirs, the fire that awakens. People feel you before you speak. They remember your energy more than your words. That's not ego, that's impact. And impact doesn't need validation, it creates it. You don't show up to prove them wrong. You show up to prove yourself right. Because you are not what they say about you. You are what you choose to rise into. They try to dim your light because it exposed their darkness. But baby, stars shine regardless of who's watching. And even when you're surrounded by clouds of doubt, your aura still beams through. You don't beg to be chosen. You choose yourself. That's the difference. While the world trains women to shrink, to apologize, to conform, you rebel, not with anger, but with elegance. Not with noise, but with presence. You are proof that stillness can be the loudest revolution. Remember, diamonds don't beg to be noticed. They just are. And pressure never breaks you. It builds you. You've faced criticism, betrayal, jealousy, and loneliness. But you never let it turn you bitter. You let it turn you brilliant. Your scars aren't shame. They're proof you fought and refused to fall. So the next time someone is uncomfortable around your energy, take it as a compliment. You didn't come to please, you came to awaken. Walk like you own every room, even if your knees shake. You came to walk like you own every room, even if your knees shake. Speak like you carry centuries of women who stayed silent before you. Love like you've never been broken, and rise again and again. like the sun does even when no one claps for its return. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs you. Raw, real, radiant. Because when a woman finally realizes she doesn't need to chase, beg, or shrink to be worthy, she becomes unforgettable. She becomes dangerous. She becomes free. And that, my love, is the most powerful aura of all you. It builds you. You've faced criticism, betrayal, jealousy, and loneliness, but you never let it turn you bitter. You let it turn you brilliant. Your scars aren't shame, they're proof you fought and refused to fall. So the next time someone is uncomfortable around your energy, take it as a compliment. You didn't come to please, you came to awaken. Walk like you own every room, even if your knees shake. You come like you own every room, even if your knees shake. Speak like you carry centuries of women who stayed silent before you. Love like you've never been broken, and rise again and again, like the sun does even when no one claps for its return. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs you. Raw, real, radiant. Because when a woman finally realizes she doesn't need to chase, she becomes free. And that, my love, is the most powerful aura of all.